Welcome into Texans today, everybody. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and we've got some very interesting news here on Texans today. Some OC interviews and maybe a new O-line coach. I think all these would be a massive gamble for the Houston Texans if they hired any of these three people. I'll break all those guys down on today's show, but I want to know from you, before we get going on today's program, what is the one thing you're looking for in a new OC? I know some people didn't want to get rid of Bobby Slowick, and I know some people very much did want to get rid of Bobby Slowick. Regardless, we need a new OC right now. Get in the comment section. I'll be looking. Let me know, what are you wanting in a new offensive coordinator? Let's first, off the rip, talk about the next offensive line coach for the Houston Texans and why that might be somebody who's already on staff. Cole Popovich was the assistant offensive line coach this season for your Houston Texans. He has 13 years of coaching experience, and if you watched my video on Nick Caserio, you know the 6 years with the New England Patriots, that speaks volume because he has that tie to Nick Caserio and kind of the inside track. And the reports that I've seen are that he didn't have that much say this past season in the Texans offensive line and how they ran as a unit, which, to be completely frank, I don't know how much of that is true, that he didn't have very much say. I have mixed feelings on this because he's a young coach, he's talented, but like I said, I'm not sure that I buy that he didn't have much say this past season in the Texans offensive line and how they were running things up front because, I mean, he was the assistant. Obviously, Strasser was the head offensive line coach for the Houston Texans, but to say you didn't really have that much say this past year raises a couple questions for me as, you know, looking for the next offensive line coach. You were already on staff. How come we couldn't fix things this season, and how come we couldn't impart some of your wisdom this season on the Texans and a bottom 5, bottom 10 offensive line that they had this year? To just promote from within, to have him be the next guy up, does worry me a little bit that maybe they're playing, you know, a little bit too much of the buddy system here with the Texans, and that, you know, we're you know, familiar with you. We know you, so we're just going to give you a chance. I don't know if I fly that much with that. I think I'd rather have a more experienced, a better offensive line coach, but we'll see what they do when it comes to Cole Popovich. I'll break that down if it does become official here on the channel. Now, coming up, the Texans interviewed 2 new OC candidates, both young, both up-and-comers, and both huge gambles if the Texans were to make these guys the next OC for Houston. Also, got to go over the other interviews that have already happened. Jeff Nixon, Syracuse OC, Jerrod Johnson, in-house interview, the QB coach, Thad Lewis, the Bucs QB coach, Nick Caserio, which I broke down in a video earlier this week, the Rams QB coach and passing game coordinator. And they also went ahead and interviewed Bill Lazor, Texans senior assistant, which, to be frank, if after all these interviews the Texans end up hiring Bill Lazor, I would be very disappointed. I wouldn't love that move of hiring a guy like Bill Lazor to be the next OC. It would be, I think, would be a safe hire and would be somewhat of an uninspiring hire. Now, going from Bill Lazor, who has a ton of skin on the wall and who's been in the NFL for a long period of time, we'll be breaking down 2 guys on today's show that don't have near as much experience as Mr. Lazor. And if the Texans do sign a new OC, as soon as it happens, I will make a video for you. Subscribe to be the first in the know, because when the Texans make a hire, we make a video. Sub for breaking news. We got you covered here on Texans Today, your one-stop shop for Texans news and rumors coverage all year long. You know where to go. Hit that sub button. It's 100% free, and join the 26,000 people who've already made Texans Today their go-to place for Texans news and rumors. So first, let's break down Brian Johnson, QB coach for the Commanders, another young and ascending coach in the NFL. The Texans have already interviewed a couple of those guys in this coaching cycle, like a Thad Lewis, like a Jerrod Johnson. Known for his work with quarterbacks, he's worked with guys such as Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, this year Jaden Daniels, who maybe had the best rookie quarterback season that we've ever seen in the NFL. In the college ranks, he worked with De'Aaron King, which, for those who are in Houston, should remember that name, was a very good quarterback for the University of Houston. And Kyle Trask worked with him while at Florida as their QB coach. And Trask, remember, a second-round pick in the NFL. He had a good career at the University of Florida. So Brian Johnson has a good track record of working with quarterbacks, and he is a young, smart mind in the NFL. He's an intriguing choice for me because he stumbled as the Eagles OC. I'm not going to lie. In 2023, he faltered a little bit as that Eagles offensive coordinator and play caller. But besides that, he's done a great job everywhere he's been. And obviously, as a young play caller, and maybe just another fun tidbit here, also was on the cover of NCAA 10 as the Utah quarterback. I think he's had a really good ascension in the coaching ranks. And obviously, him being so young, getting that Eagles OC position and that play caller position was a huge deal for him. And it didn't go the way that he wanted it, per se, but I don't think that's necessarily a reason to give up on Brian Johnson just yet. I talked to our Commanders host, Jack Sperry, here at Chat Sports, covers the Commanders. I mean, one of the smartest guys I know when it comes to Commanders football, and this is what he had to say about Brian Johnson, the QB coach. Johnson comes from the Urban Meyer tree of the college spread offenses under Dan Mullen, both at Mississippi State and Florida, before taking the QB coach job with the Eagles. When he was promoted to OC, he ran a very simplistic college-esque spread system with lots of screens, simple spread route concepts from shotgun, and not a lot of pre-snap motion. This year, he's been learning under Cliff Kingsbury, who did a great job modernizing the air raid style of offense to the NFL with multiple RB sets, pre-snap motion, and full field progression reads to better suit that kind of system to the NFL game. So I think the biggest thing that I took from that, and shout out to Jack Sperry for the great quotes there, is I think, one, if he's hired, expect Stroud to move around more in the pocket, a lot more from shotgun, and to have the offense more spread out. But two, I think the biggest thing in that is he was with the Eagles. He ran a very simplistic scheme. He came to Washington, came to the Commanders, learned under Cliff Kingsbury a little bit, who runs a similar style offense, and they molded it a little bit to where I think if he came in as the OC, it would be a better version of the Eagles offense that we saw in 2023, able to kind of take those things that he learned from Cliff Kingsbury, who is a hot head coaching candidate, especially going into next season. I mean, I think would have been in strong consideration for that New Orleans Saints job if he didn't take himself out of the consideration. I think his time in Washington, his time with the Eagles, both those are going to help him to wherever he lands next for his next OC job. Because if he doesn't become an OC this season, I believe will 100% get a job in the next coaching cycle. I think it would be a very exciting hire for the Texans, but still a risk, still a gamble, because the only time he's been an OC in the NFL, it did not work out. He only lasted one season in Philadelphia. But speaking of CJ Stroud and moving outside the pocket a little bit more, I think this is something that we all kind of collectively thought together while watching the playoffs this year. Going into next year, I think CJ Stroud needs to run the ball more. Do you agree with me? Give me a yes, give me a no, give me your reasoning down below. I think what we saw from CJ Stroud in that Chargers game, in that Chiefs game, I think that was one of the better versions of CJ Stroud. He upped his game in the playoffs 100%, and I think along with that was him running the ball, and maybe not design runs like we see with Jaden Daniels and Jalen Hurts, but I think him running the ball and picking up those 5-6 extra yards from time to time really helped out this Texans offense. Let me know your thoughts down below. And coming up next, who is Grant Udinski? And could he be an option for the Texans OC position? I talked about Brian Johnson being a gamble. This would be the biggest gamble of all time, going out and getting a guy like Grant Udinski. This is pushing all your chips into the middle. You're putting all your chips on red or black on this one. Hell, hiring Grant Udinski is putting all your chips on green at the roulette table, because it is huge reward but a major risk if you were to hire this man, and the Texans are interviewing him this week. We'll talk about that in just a moment, but first, got to show some love to today's sponsor, Game Time. They're the place to go for last-second tickets. No matter what city you're in, they got you covered on the best tickets in the game. There's nothing in the world like watching a live sporting event and sharing those moments with friends, family, loved ones. That's what it's all about. And the playoffs, they're almost over, and there's nothing else like going and seeing playoff football. Whether you're trying to sit at the 50-yard line or you're like me trying to get some of those nosebleed tickets on the cheap, Game Time has you covered. They got tickets on they got deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, and even an hour after it starts, it is the place to find those last-minute seats. And with their new feature Game Time picks, they basically filter out all the fluff to show you the very best bang for your buck, the very best deals on the app, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. You know what the best deals are for whatever event you're trying to go to. So download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It is game time. So, Grant Udinski, who is he? What is this guy for the Vikings that the Texans all of a sudden have interest in for their OC, and why is it not Josh McCown? Really? I mean, the QB coach for the Vikings, the Texans interviewed him for the head coach job, and I know Josh McCown said he didn't really want to leave unless it was for a head coaching job, but to be in charge of the Texans offense, I think that's as close as he's going to get for right now and would really catapult him into a head coaching gig if he did take it. But let's talk about Grant Udinski. He's a rising star in the coaching world, especially in the Sean McVay coaching tree. People near him say he is extremely smart. He's actually the same age as me, though. He's 28 years old. And back in 2018, he was playing defensive end in college. So a very peculiar, start to his coaching career. Apparently, I talked to our Vikings host. He is a right-hand man to Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota, and they really would love to keep him on staff. And I think from what our Vikings host told me, the plan is they really want to groom this kid to be their next OC whenever Josh McCown and their current OC head off and leave for other teams. This is a very odd case because he comes with little to no experience. I mean, in 2019, he was an assistant for Baylor, helped out there, and then kind of got plucked up from Kevin O'Connell with the Minnesota Vikings just a couple years ago. He's touted as a whiz kid and one of the smartest young coaches in the NFL, a rising star, like I said, among coaching circles. And this is what Albert Breer actually had to say on Grant Udinski. The first thing you may notice about Udinski is his title, which is unique. He started his coaching career under Matt Rule, who hired him at Baylor and took him to the Carolina Panthers on the advice of veteran assistant Brian Johnson. Kevin O'Connell poached him in 2022. From there, Udinski went from assistant to the head coach, special projects, to assistant quarterbacks coach to his current title, and each little step was taken in an effort by O'Connell to keep Udinski on the coaching staff as long as he could. Even if that meant having to work around already having a very solid offensive coordinator and quarterback coach on the payroll, the head coach did it because the reality was Udinski had become the right-hand man, and enough folks around the NFL had come to know his value to a surging Vikings program. Even with all that from Albert Breer, and maybe that is true that he is the mastermind. He's the brains behind everything going on in Minnesota, which I highly doubt. I think Kevin O'Connell, very good coach. I think their offensive staff, like Breer said, highly touted. Josh McCown has gotten head coach interviews before, and he's the QB coach there. So I get all the things, and I get he's super smart. But I wouldn't feel comfortable making him our next OC and play caller. With that little experience, you're telling me a 28-year-old who has no play calling experience whatsoever, has just been an apprentice, has studied under guys like Matt Rule and Kevin O'Connell, is ready to completely take the reins and take over the entire Texans offense. I don't think so, Jim. I don't think so. I think there's book smarts and then there's street smarts. And I don't think he is ready to be the guy in charge. Maybe the Texans are interviewing him to give him a higher role as the QB coach if they do hire a different offensive coordinator. Maybe that's the plan, and giving him a higher title with the Texans and a little bit of a raise than what he has with the Minnesota Vikings. But no, if they make him the OC, this is a huge risk for the Houston Texans and DeMeco Ryans, because a guy like that, yes, I get it. He's smart. He's young. He's a hot candidate. But at the same time, putting that much faith in a young, let's just say a young kid. I'm 28 years old. He's the same age as me. Would I want myself to be the entire, basically say so for the Texans offense, be the guy in charge who's supposed to mold CJ Stroud? That's a lot of pressure on a guy who has not been in any sort of position with that pressure before in his entire coaching career. So, like I said, a major gamble if they went ahead and hire Grant Udinski or even Brian Johnson in that breath to be the next OC, but 2 more candidates on the board to add for the Houston Texans. That's all I have for you on today's show, folks. Make sure you hit that sub button and never miss a moment of Texans football here on Texans Today.